be here and have a chance to talk with you and share a little bit about the Monzo journey and what's going on. So I think it's always better for people to introduce themselves. So what I'd love to do is if you would share what it is that you want to share about you,
Sure.
and then we'll jump in.
Yeah. So I'm Tristan. I'm the head of marketing and community at Monzo. It looked like about 50% of people had a Monzo card, which is not high enough. So please sign up after this session. I oversee a bunch of different stuff at Monzo, including what we call community. So how do we get people involved in what we're doing, and how do we get them really bought into the company? Also our social mission impact, and then helping to grow the business. So we're at about 800,000 customers now, which is great.
Fantastic. Tristan and I were talking just a little bit before, so what I wanted to do is jump in on community. Community plays a really important role for Monzo. You've gone to the community for crowdfunding. You've gone to the community for product development and features. You've got things on the website about your product roadmap, and you've gone to the community to help you grow the business. Talk a little bit about the community and how they're playing in all of these different aspects of building Monzo.
Yes, I guess we don't do any traditional marketing. We don't do ads on the side of buses or big tube ads. We grow through people telling their friends, through word of mouth and referrals. About 80% of our growth comes through that. That's 60 to 70,000 people a month at the moment. And so we think about how do we grow that? How do we continually increase the rate of growth by helping people to invite their friends and getting them bought in enough that they want to tell all of their friends? So that's things like getting them involved to help make decisions. So in 2016, they renamed us from Mondo to Monzo after a trademark dispute. Last year, they helped us choose pricing. They chose the pricing for ATM fee withdrawals, for ATM withdrawals when they're abroad. And then taking that to the next level and saying, hey, you've helped us with all of that. You've told all of your friends. How do we involve you in Monzo's success? And that's where crowdfunding comes in. So we've now done 2 rounds, about 3.5 million, and have 7,000 of the most passionate investors possible.
So when you think about crowdfunding, you've also gone to, if I can use the word, traditional VC. You've got some great people like Eileen Burbidge at Passion that's an investor. Maybe you can explain a little bit about how you look at a venture capitalist versus how you look at a crowdfunding and why you've chosen both of those paths.
Yeah, people always ask us about crowdfunding and sort of say, oh, what a great way to raise money. For us, it's a very difficult way to raise money. It requires a lot more time, it requires a lot more engagement, a lot more energy compared to going out and talking to venture capitalists. So the way we go about it is alongside every institutional round we do, we try and carve out some for crowdfunding. And that is literally carving out. It's arguing with investors and saying, hey, we want to save some of this for our customers. Again, not because we want the money, but because we can get an opportunity to give them a part of the success, but also to help them get even more bought into what we're doing. If we can get 8,000 customers, and hopefully more in the future, if we get 50,000 or 100,000 customers who've invested money in their bank, that just changes your relationship with your bank totally. It changes the way you think about the company, and hopefully the way you then go and tell all of your friends.
So you say it takes more time, but it took you 96 seconds to raise $1 million, was it?
Yeah.
So you've got a bunch of people that are excited and passionate. It sounds like what you do is you have a lot of people that express interest. Some you select based on a lottery to be investors, and some you just expose to the business that you're building.
Yeah, so in that first round, the £1 million in 96 seconds, we just saw this huge amount of demand that took us all by surprise. And so then when we came to do our second round, we wanted to find a way to make it as fair as possible. So we had 2.5 million available, and we said to people, pledge how much you want to invest, and then we'll randomly select you. It was a really great result. We had £12 million pledged, so we were only able to take 2.5. One of the downsides, interestingly, was that we had 40,000 people pledged to invest, and so we were only able to accept 6,000. As a community engagement tool, that actually didn't work very well because it meant that we'd sort of disappointed 35,000 people, which backfired slightly. So we're now thinking about, in the future, how do we make sure that we involve as many people as possible and disappoint basically no one.
Were you able to go back and figure out, of those 35,000 that weren't selected to be investors, did a large percentage of them go on to become Monzoites? Or I'm not even sure what the expression...
Monzo
Okay,
Norse.
there you go. But did that work for you in that sense?
So again, it's only for customers.
Oh,
So we
okay.
only open it up for customers. I think in the first round, external people could invest, but it's not important for us to get outside people in. It's about how do we get our customers involved? How do we help them be a part of it?
Okay. So Gary the previous speaker was just talking a little bit about GDPR and privacy. You can't have a conversation these days without trust and privacy and security, so I'll put them all in one big bundle there. How does Monzo think about this issue of you want to be very transparent, but you also are dealing with people's very sensitive information? How does that factor in when you build a product and think about this balance between transparency and privacy?
Yeah. It's something we grapple with every single day. And I think there's a few different aspects to it. So security is obviously incredibly important with your money. And some people have a worry that with an app-based bank that it's going to be less secure. On that, I don't see a big issue. I think overall, we've built all of our systems from the ground up ourselves in the last few years using modern technology. And that just means our ability to secure those systems is far ahead of what it would be if you'd been doing it for hundreds of years. Privacy is much more interesting, I think, because there's much more of a gray in between white and black. And as a bank, we see a huge amount of your personal data. We know where you live. We know your sort of identity. We see where you shop every day. We see who you send money to. And those are really personal things for people. And we have to really make clear to people that that is your data. And we're never going to sell it. We're never going to use it for anything that you don't want us to use it for. In the long term, we talk about a sort of marketplace model where you can connect in other services. You can already connect your Monzo account into IFTTT and sort of turn on your smart lights when you get paid and useful stuff like that. And again, it's about how do we make sure that the user's totally in control of it? Do they totally understand what's going to happen to their data, and can they turn it off at any time?
Okay. One of the things that I always would like to do is to see if there's questions on anybody's mind, because I personally don't like sitting and listening to somebody that never gives me an opportunity to ask. So what I'm going to do is take just a second and see if anybody would like to ask a question, and if not, then you get the next minute or two to reflect, and I'll go back out to the audience. So anybody that would like to ask a question? Yes, please. I'm sorry, I don't know how to otherwise. Yes, please. Oh, I guess we have a mic coming your way.
I hope you can answer this question, but feel free to not if you don't want to.
Sounds exciting.
But I'm coming from financial services, and I cannot stop wondering, how old are you? To hold the position you hold right now versus other marketing people.
I'm assuming the question is not to me, but I guess it's to you.
How old do you think I am?
Too young.
I'm 26. I don't know if that's too young or not.
Impressive, really impressive.
Oh, there you go. Worked out okay. And there was another question over here, please. By the pillar, I think there. Yeah, thanks.
Hi. I was wondering what sort of Monzo's stance on cryptocurrency, and if you're watching Revolut, and if that's going to come.
Yeah, cryptocurrency is a really interesting one. People ask us about it all the time. We don't have a company stance either for or against cryptocurrency. Internally, I think people like it. They think it's a very cool idea and sort of has huge potential. In the end, we're trying to build something for the mass market. We want to build something that attracts 95% of customers. And at the moment, cryptocurrency just isn't that. When we talk to customers, when we talk to people with bank accounts with HSBC and Barclays, they're not asking us for Bitcoin, honestly. They're asking us for, hey, I want to understand where my money goes better. I want to be able to budget better. I want to get a decent mortgage or understand my credit score. And so we're just focusing on that for now. At some point, I think that will change. And so hopefully we'll solve some of those problems. Hopefully sort of cryptocurrency usage increases and becomes more mainstream. And at that point, as soon as customer demand is there, there's no reason we wouldn't. In terms of Revolut, who are a sort of competitor of ours, I guess, I think it's great. They have a couple of million customers. We're about to reach 1 million. In the end, we're not competing against each other. We're competing against Barclays, who have 20 million customers, and HSBC. And honestly, we're competing against consumer apathy. The fun stat is more people get divorced than change bank accounts. And so we need to change that. We need to make it a normal thing for people to be able to change their bank account. And if that comes about because they hear of Revolut first, that's great.
I'm sorry, I don't know in particular order. Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
You spoke a little bit about growing with word of mouth and that kind of stuff at a stage where you already had a pretty established business and you got people involved with the community and making product decisions and so on. But how do you actually get that started from the point where you don't really have a product and people don't know about you? How do you get to a point where people want to talk about you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I joined Monzo before we had no customers, and our product was a landing page with a sort of email sign-up form, which no one had signed up to, surprisingly. But we started with community then. And so our very first event that we ran was a hackathon, and we invited developers to come and build something on a bank that's got an API. And the first one was very awkward. It was about 15 people, mainly friends, who sort of had a weekend playing around with an API. But we blogged about it, and we talked about it, and we tweeted about it. And we ran one a month later, and we had 30 people. And we hadn't met some of those people. And then the next one we hosted had 50 people. And by then, we had a bit of a product to give. So we gave them the product. And then they told their friends, and they gave them the product. And by the time we were running the next hackathon, we filled it out with 150 people. And over time, that just kept snowballing, where people were telling their friends about us, all from that very early community. And so if you looked at the demographics of our first 5,000 users, they were 25 to 40-year-old males who work in tech as developers in Shoreditch, because that was our group who came to the first hackathon. Luckily, over time, with network effects, that's changed, and so we've now sort of evened out and broadened all of the demographic information. But at the beginning, it just went in exactly the same way, and that's where we started to double down on word-of-mouth growth.
So you get a couple of tech evangelists that like what you're doing, offer useful feedback on the product development, want to be a part of it, and then as it becomes more mainstream, more and more people find use cases.
Finding that like very core group of people who are really well connected.
The influencers, where you get one person and they amplify it significantly.
Yeah. Just Eat's CMO always says that their first customers were gamers, because they started to look at the first few customers and they were ordering takeaway from the takeaway that they lived above and getting it brought up the stairs to them. Because they couldn't tear themselves away from whatever it was when Just Eat was started. And so they focused on that, and they tried to get, how did you get all of the gamers as a market, and then grow from there.
So the same kind of adoption curve that Bitcoin went through, and it has a super hardcore fanatic crowd, and then the more and more people start to think about it, and then it becomes more widely spread. So when we think about, although you get people like Tim Draper that's fanatical about Bitcoin and tells as many people as he can, and we'll see where it ultimately goes. Talk a little bit about your openness, because you posted some things on the website and you said, our mission is this, but our quarterly goals are these, and we may or may not stick with this concept of sharing our goals with you, but it seems like one of your core values is put it out there. So how's that experiment going in terms of putting your quarterly goals as a company out for everybody to read?
Yeah, transparency, it comes back to how do we ensure that our customers are really close to what we're doing. So we share pretty much everything. We share our product roadmap. You can go on and see exactly what we're going to build for the next few months. We share our annual report and say, hey, this is how much money we're making and losing. And then last week, we decided to publish our quarterly goals, as you said, and sort of see what happened, honestly. We set internal goals, and someone asked a question on our Slack channel and said, why don't we publish these externally? And we couldn't really think of a good reason. It seemed like always it's something that companies don't do just because they're worried about unknown risks. And there are definitely risks, right? And we've tried to sort of outline some of that and done it as an experiment to avoid necessarily doing it in the future if it doesn't work. But so far the reaction's been amazing. It helps people understand why we're making the decisions we're making now. They join Monzo because they can see this bank of the future in 3 years' time, and then they're annoyed because right now we're spending time on making overdrafts. But when you then boil that down and look at goals and look at where the company's at, we have to do some overdrafts in order to make some money so that we can still be here in 3 years' time.
So you're getting people to be emotionally invested in your journey, and especially because people, as a general statement, don't feel good about their relationship with a traditional bank. So the more you get them to be emotionally invested in you, the more that they'll want to be with you and share that good news. Let me go out and see. Yes, please.
Thanks, Tristan. On the topic of transparency, privacy, community, can you speak a little bit to what happens with the money that customers like me give to Monzo and where that's invested? And are there any ways that your technology can be used to bring more transparency to that space? Are you investing in line with the type of world your customers want to see?
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
It's a really good question. So the way we approach it is we want to be an ethical bank for your money, but we're not going about it in the same way like a bank like Co-op would, where that is their unique selling point, right? We are building a bank for the mainstream that is also ethical. So the way we go about it now is publishing on our website exactly where the money that you put into Monzo is invested at any point in time. And we've publicly committed to doing that forever. And so at any time you'll be able to go and see exactly what we're doing with the money. I hope in the future we'll also start to build in more policies around what we do and don't invest in, sort of especially around positive investment. But we just don't have the resources to do that. And our investment right now is really boring. So you can go to monzo.com/ethics, and you'll see that we invest 10 to 15% of your money into overdrafts for other customers. And the rest goes to the Bank of England and sits in an account at the Bank of England and doesn't do much there. So at some point, both when we have the resources internally and also start to think about, hey, what are we going to do with this money, we'll publish more around that. In the end, we're not trying to build a bank with a massive balance sheet, though. We want to connect you into other providers as much as possible. So if you want a savings account, hey, let us help you do that with another provider and not necessarily hold it all ourselves.
So just as we get to the end of this thing, would you consider Monzo to be a business model disruptor? I'm going to use the word for a second. A business model disruptor or a technology disruptor? You know, that you want to, no conversation can be complete without invoking blockchain or artificially intelligent systems, or so is the idea that, hey, you just want to create a system using available tools, but community and letting customers shape that is your differentiator versus some super wizzo group of people that have just come out of University of Cambridge to do something ridiculous. So how do you think of Monzo's differentiator?
I like to think that we can build a bank where you have your customers invested in you, but you're not a cooperative. That you have your customers helping to make decisions for you, but you're not a mutual. That you're doing good for the world and you're not a charity. And you can do all of those things as a business. And aligning our incentives really, really well with our customers' incentives. And so making sure that we are making money when it's best for the customer. So not ripping you off with loans and PPI and all of that crap, but instead helping you get services that you need, helping you save money, then we can make some money. And then I think when we look back in 5 years' time, you'll look back on the bank's business models as very predatory. And the technology for us is an enabler, right? We are a technology company who happens to have a banking license, but we're not there for the technology. We're there for what we can do for people in society.
So we've timed out, but what I'm going to do is just do the straw poll survey. So for those that already raised their hand and said that they're Monzo customers, now you've heard Tristan describe do good things and also have it be economically viable and sustainable, and to create this new type of banking relationship where the customer is really playing a critical role. So are more people interested in becoming involved with Monzo? I'll say yes, I thought that was cool. There you go.
There we go. It's not
All right,
fired
Tristan,
today.
thank you for having time with us, and thanks everybody for your questions.
Thank you.